Ready? Aim!
There's too many!
Anyone see my mammoth?
Stubby!
But now I can't seem to find the picture.
Don't worry, I will do. Hello everyone! I'm back again this week, and I'm here with Dave, and Dave was just telling me there he needs the stats for what we're going to discuss today, which I will sort out for him. Anyway, I hope everyone's had a great week. Sorry for the slow start, guys, just sorting out some technical issues while I caught up with Dave. But how you doing anyway, Dave? You alright?
Doing good.
Yeah? Enjoying the song still?
Definitely enjoy it. Just don't get to play it as much as I would like.
Yeah, it's the age-old problem, isn't it, at the moment? It feels like you're not the only one, certainly. Yes. Recently, I think we'll discuss it first. I think. Oh no, we'll discuss the Iron Victory Crew first. So the Iron Victory Crew is going to be our first port of call today, and you can kind of probably make a joke, something about ports and pirates and all of that in a minute. There you go, Dave. I just sent that to you on Discord, and I will load up for people at home. For those of you who don't remember, the Iron Victory Crew look a little bit like this. So, last time I was on, we saw these guys first revealed, first mentioned. And basically, my opinion was they're good. The two abilities that we didn't know, which was Captain's Men and Domineering Pride, were most likely didn't need to be anything to be a good unit for 6 points. We've since seen them. Domineering Pride is truly awful ability, like as in it's only useful in like 1 or 2 scenarios. So yeah, who cares? And Captain's Men have Vic and or Newt, of course, and start with 1 pillage token. It's nice. It's fine. What are your thoughts initially, Dave? Are you excited by this? Do you look at it and go, yeah, you know, whatever? Well, where'd you feel?
Well, me and I have like a local Discord, or not Discord, a local messenger chat with like all the local people within a pretty big radius, and we were discussing it pretty heavily. And my feelings on it are pretty mixed. I kind of have it placed in 3 categories. If we're talking about putting Vic in there, I think it's the auto pick, in my opinion. All the units, it's the auto pick. I think Newt doesn't mesh as well, so I think there's an argument to be made that you put Newt in them, or you put Newt in, I don't know, Silenced Men still, you could argue, or something else. But I would say if you're not putting either of them in there, I just don't see myself running these guys. With the Domineering Pride, the one without getting that 1 pillage, they're not terrible by no means, but I think I would just rather run Reavers.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is, for 6 points, you're not getting much over Reavers for the extra point. Like, the defensive stats are better. Like, you don't really care because aggressively, which is probably why you're buying the unit, Reavers do the same thing. I completely agree. It's interesting you mentioned that with Newt, you didn't particularly fancy them. Why not?
I think that panic token, when you have 2 pillage, is a lot less tempting when you don't have Vic's Vicious or any vicious debuff. You know, any negative to their vicious, whether it be intimidating presence or something similar. So I usually find a panic token to just be it's a nice little icing on the cake when you don't have anything to stack it with, but it's not like, man, I'm really looking to make that combo work. Now I still see the appeal of starting with a pillage. One of my auto includes for, if we're talking not NCUs but units, one of my auto includes pretty much for Greyjoys is Bowman with Euron 1-point attachment. And then if I'm running Vic and Newt, starting the game with 4 pillage can be extremely strong, because getting maxed out on pillage token right away across your army is incredibly strong.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think I mean, I'm not a massive fan of Euron myself, but that's just because I think there's usually better 1 points to spend it on elsewhere in the list. But that's not to say that he's bad. The lists I tend to build don't really want Euron, more or less. But that being said, I don't play a lot of Greyjoys. I haven't been playing a lot of Greyjoys since the major overhaul to Greyjoys. I used to play them a lot, and I used to really like things like, your Black Tide Chosen and things like that. And now, since they've changed all of those units and arguably made some of them better, I haven't played them, and I've not really been that big in Greyjoy since season 3 and 4, really. That being said, I do actually agree with you a little bit. I think, pillage generation is so important. Anything that generates pillage, thus Euron obviously being there, is an important factor to that. But yeah, I can kind of see why you wouldn't want to take Newt, and also I can see why you want the pillage versions with the Vic list, but then there are other options. It's an odd one. With things like Black Tide Chosen, especially now with the thing like the first claim ability, Eric still obviously doing what he does, although it's dubious whether or not I think Eric's actually very good. And of course Raiding Call, which is most people's go-to pillage generator. But yeah, it's odd. I actually think these are bizarre in that I said last time I thought these would probably be very good and completely takeable. And with Vic, I completely agree with what you were saying in terms of I think they are 100% the right pick. I'm still tempted to take it with Newt, but I can see what you were saying about not having the Vicious. And I think that depends on what you're facing. In that, if you're facing like 6 and 5 to some extent, but 6 and 7 morale targets, without Vicious, a panic token is actually still pretty good at changing the odds to a failed panic. But you're right, if you're playing like morale 5, which, let's face it, the game is like morale 5 base now, it seems. Morale
and
5.
Then you just happen to have a tree sitting around,
Yeah, exactly. Morale 4, morale 3, even with a panic token, you arguably you need the panic token, but you need a modifier as well. And in the end of the day, against those kind of targets, one failed panic test is usually not enough to push through any significant change. You need it more consistently. And Domineering Pride is just trash.
I've never had it work for or against me.
I have seen it work once. This was essentially Varamir Pets versus City Guard or City Watch from Lannisters, because they've only got one rank because they're a solo. That is the only reason I can imagine you running Domineering Pride with any regularity and thinking it was good is if you only played against people who ran like giant lists.
Yeah, I think Domineering Pride could get one of two changes and be really useful. Either you change it to be equal or more, or you change it to be, you change like the timing to where it will impact the panic test even before you attack. That way you can't just attack, skim off a rank, and then it be useless.
Yeah. I think from my initial change, making it equal ranks makes it probably very strong. Mm-hmm. But I don't hate that necessarily, because the irony of this is that this is actually incredibly strong, against targets where you get to alpha and alpha strike hard first. Because you just strip 2, if you're able to strip 2 ranks with your base attack, and then they have to strip 2 ranks off you in 1 attack, which is 8 wounds is pretty unlikely in 1 attack without the panic test, then you're just going to be like, right, well, I've won this fight. And it almost feels kind of like it just pushes you further and further to want to alpha, where you think that Domineering Pride should be something that wants to grind, but it's just alpha harder and you'll be fine. Which is such a bizarre kind of net result of that ability. Yeah, 6 points. Playable. And nice models, right? That's the other thing. Nice models.
Yep.
The sculpts are actually pretty good.
Now, I could also see like Domineering Pride, like if I know there's only so much space on the card for like abilities, but if you like always comboed Domineering Pride with Unyielding, that way if you are getting knocked down those ranks, it's almost like that double-edged sword. Okay, you either are going to have high ranks and potentially auto pass, or you're going to be low ranks and be minusing the damage that you take in altogether.
Yeah.
But obviously, you know, I don't know. I would almost consider that 1 point's worth if you gave them both abilities.
Yeah. Datalink says something in chat. I actually think Unyielding's better than that anyway. That's the irony. Like, you're giving Domineering Pride and Unyielding to a unit, and you're basically saying that Domineering Pride would be made better if you just made it Unyielding. Datalink says, Domineering Pride is also good versus solos and cav. Yeah, solos I can see it, because actually most solos are very unlikely to do 8 wounds in one swing. So that makes sense. But Cav, I'm sorry, but I don't think it's that good against Cav, because Cav, any good Cav is alpha striking before you are. And any good Cav that's alpha striking is taking a rank off a 4+6+.
Yep.
Like,
yeah, in theory, it should be good against Cav,
yes.
But unfortunately, you just can't, unless your opponent really misplays, you really can't bridge that gap to get in there before the Cav does. Like, if you charge Cav with infantry without some like crazy maneuver shenanigans, your opponent either messed up or they wanted you to charge that Cav for, you know, whatever reason. Maybe they had some play set up. And that's kind of what I've run into, because I've thought the same thing. Okay, I'm going to use this as a way to punish Cav when I face it, and it never works.
Wardens of the Midwest, so Edge notices, would be good against Natsukasi Rock if you ever got them first, but how often does that happen? Which kind of sums up exactly what you were saying there. In like, the theory is okay, but it kind of falls down the moment you try and apply it. Yeah, and
now,
yeah, go on.
I was gonna say, now if you could combine Domineering Pride with I mean, I guess this is kind of one of those situations where I was just about to say, if you could combine it with coordination tactics, that'd be awesome, which you can, but then that means you're not running Victorian Commander.
Yeah. The age old. You can still put Newt in them though, of course, or Vic attachment.
Vic 2 point. Oh, that's a good point, is that I didn't clarify. When I said if you put Vic in them, I do also kind of mean the 2-point attachment.
Okay.
I know a lot of people are kind of mixed feelings about Relentless, but I think even like if you're talking about the best of the best players like in the world or even in your particular country, they're probably going to get around Relentless pretty easy. But I've found by using Relentless, even some of the like top players, they don't have good answers for it, and Relentless just deletes units, especially in Greyjoys, when you can Relentless over and over and over and you finally kill them, and then you just bring them back with Balon and you just Relentless over and over and over. Especially if you have a way to either tie up or distract their ranged unit from shooting Vic.
I've just been mildly frustrated by looking at Vic 2 points. In that Vic 2-pointer compared to the commander. Don't get me wrong, like commanders and attachments have to have different abilities because value, etc. Like you would have to make them slightly different. But I am distinctly frustrated and confused now that Victarion, when he's not your commander, is no longer vicious. He's slightly just less aggressive when he's your attachment. He's just kind of like, well, you know, I used to chop people brutally in half and try and make them all scared of me, but fine, I'll just hit them a lot.
Yeah, it'd be nice if like he gave critical blow as the attachment. So like,
wow,
I could see both of those keywords like making sense with his character, and you know, especially you're paying 2 points for him, because it's, you know, in fun games I run a lot of 2 points, but if we're talking like competitively, yeah, it's very rare that I'll ever throw a 2 point in there. They need to be worth like 3 points worth in order for you to even consider them.
Yeah, they just need to be insane value, right? Yeah. Oh well, there it is. No, I mean it's good. I mean, Data's agreeing you in with saying that these are great with Victarion over Silence Men. The damage output's virtually the same, and the extra point gives you other options elsewhere in the list. So that is obviously really good. Brandon saying the unit isn't bad at all. Don't really understand their role in Greyjoy. What do they do that Reavers and Silence Men don't do? And is the value strictly in the 4+ armor? I think it's in both. I think it's the fact that they're not as expensive as Silence Men, but they're more expensive than Reavers, and they are getting defensive buffs, which, while maintaining the aggressive output, like this is a real meeting point of the two kind of thing coming together. Where a lot of the time we've seen in Greyjoy specifically, you never get the same aggressive profile maintained through a defensive increase as well. Like, you just don't have that in Greyjoy. Every time you go up and get an offensive increase or offensive swap of like keywords and damage output type, like for example Reapers instead of Reavers, you also don't get a change in defensive profile, and so everything just runs around with 5+ armor unless you're Ironmakers, in which case you run around with a 2+ armor because, you know, that makes sense. There was this weird missing halfway house. Blacktide Chosen for a while filled it, and I thought they were really good. Pillagers are now kind of doing that a little bit. Blacktide Chosen's still doing that a little bit, and I think this is another one of those units that kind of does it like that mid house a bit. And sometimes having that midway house is good. Like, sometimes relatively all-round units can be useful. Especially when they are doing the aggressive thing or doing one thing just as good as anyone else does it. So yeah. I think a lot of people say that you want, and perhaps incorrectly, that you want units in this game that are designed for one thing and one thing only. I think you want that in list building, and probably like the most of your list is going to be made up of tools that are just always good at this one specific thing. But you also want cost-effective units that are going to be good at multiple different things. You only need one, maybe two of these mid-range units, if you want to call them that. Because you never know when you're going to need something that can just do something that you need in the list against a different opponent. You know, Silence Men are great and all, but then you face into something that just does a billion hits in your 5+ armor, especially if you've got Sundering or a flank. Your 5+ armor just makes you die. Like, you know, for a long time, and you'll remember this one actually, Ranger Hunters were just absolutely shredding Silence Men left, right, and centre. Because you just go, right, well, I'm rolling 14, 15, 16 dice against you. I don't care how good you are at killing me, I'm just gonna kill you. So yeah, sometimes you need the extra defense, but that doesn't say that defense is that important. Yeah, I'm excited to see these on the table. I think that's the biggest thing for me, is that for me, I think they're a unit that I expect to see on the table. And that's a good thing. More variety is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I am definitely buying 2 units of it. Like I said, for Newt, I'm not sold, but I definitely will run Newt in them. I don't think he's terrible by any stretch of the imagination. I just think it's debatable. It depends on what you're looking for. I think that extra pillage could really make a difference depending on what you're trying to do, especially if you want the unit to start with 2 pillage, like I was mentioning with Euron one point. I agree with you in the sense that if you're looking to run Euron 1 point in pretty much anything else but Bowman, there's definitely way better 1 points. The only reason I throw them in Bowman is often the Bowman are only going to do 1 action a turn, meaning Euron's downside is just taking off 1 a turn. And they're that pop a guy and then give out a token within long on, again, a unit that's hopefully going to be sitting back and not be targeted or at least charged or something. And then with their ability to pass out the tokens, because I don't plan to keep the tokens on that unit.
Yeah.
I want to spread the wealth and get my, we'll say, Uber units, or my units that are going to be doing the heavy lifting, a leg up with 1 pillage already. So I think there's definitely something to be said about running Vic and Newt in each in this unit, and then running Euron and Bowman. You start the game with 4 pillage, especially if you have some other means to get pillage, whether it be through your tactics cards or something else. I think you could really. I think the more pillage you start with, especially if you're going to be putting it on your heavy hitters, the easier it is for you to want to alpha strike, which is what Vic is going to usually want to be doing.
One of the things I hadn't considered as well with Euron, with the change to pillage tokens, and the fact that let's be super honest here. Greyjoy archers are not going to be generating their own pillage tokens by killing things in melee often. So by starting with 2, you get the morale buff, you get the attack dice buff, which can be useful on a range unit in kind of an opening situation. But then being able to swap them onto your frontline units to be more aggressive. Even after like shooting, you shoot with the unit, get the benefit of the +1 dice. But then on the next turn, you divide the spoils and you move the token onto somebody else.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden your aggressive units in the front line have got those 2 tokens. I could see that working. Especially because those archers aren't going to get the tokens any other way. Like, that ain't happening. Yeah, I could kind of see it happening. And I can kind of see how it would work in a list build.
Well, especially with Eric now. I do kind of like the Eric the way he is now rather than the way he was. But with that said, so many other NCUs are so much better looking that even though I think I like this Eric better, I'd never take him because there's just so many other NCUs that are more appealing. But with that said, either way, I'm not running Eric. If you're not running Eric, you're not getting the pillage that way. And I found that in a lot of my games, if you want to be super aggressive with Greyjoys, it's really hard, excuse me, if you can't generate those pillage fast enough. If your opponent is cavalry and you need to skim off 6 wounds to get your first pillage, or if they're just super defensive and you're just not able to get 4 wounds in on an attack, if you're weakened or this or that, it really makes it an uphill battle. So that's why I've found Euron starting with those 2 pillage have been priceless. And then that token that the bowman can pass out is nothing to forget about. 1 wound off of a 4-point bowman to make someone vulnerable, or oh man, I somehow didn't plan for this and now my unit is vulnerable to this attack. Okay, activate, pop a guy, that unit's weakened. So it's come in handy pretty much every game I've ever used it.
So I'm gonna put something together here. So I'm using Reapers as Victarion's crew for now. But Vikin crew, Newton crew, doing the double crew type thing. Euron Bowman, Wendy and Balon NCUs. We've got 13 points left. I know you're a 2 NCU kind of guy.
Not in Greyjoy, actually.
Not in Greyjoy?
No.
Wow.
Greyjoy is almost always exclusively 3 NCUs for me. For me, it really, I'm like 50-50 with 2 NCU, 3 NCU. I really build it based on the faction and the way things are kind of looking in the list. But Greyjoys, especially with how, in my opinion, busted Balon is, he just 3 is the way to go.
Yeah.
The only reason I say 2 for Martells is that cunning ploy with because they have Spearman at 5 points with set for charge and the attack reposition, and then cunning ploy in the base deck. A lot of the times that is key to a lot of my setup for a lot of my plays. And with only 4 combat units, 3 NCUs, I'm really, it's really hard to pull off that cunning ploy without sacrificing in a much needed place on the board.
Fair. So I've got Wendy and Balon. I think Wendy's still fine. Balon is obviously Balon, which need we talk too much about him? And I mean, I'm trying to avoid the Eric because I feel like if we're going the Eric pick, then we probably don't need the Euron, and we probably don't need to generate all this pillage anyway.
You want to know a low key awesome NCU that I think a lot of people sleep on way too much?
Well, I was gonna say I think Makoro's amazing.
He is.
But who is you gonna say?
So I'm gonna put a little asterisk next to this. He is amazing as a 3rd NCU. Period.
Yeah.
Not 1, not 2, as your number 3, and that is Botley.
Yeah, I can see Botley. I have to admit, I was a bit disappointed with the change where you couldn't take a zone for the whole round, like it just counted as not being in the game kind of thing.
Yeah.
Changing that to what he's got now is, I think, unfortunate, but actually it probably makes him... It does make him good. Like, being able to deny a zone. One of the things that I think people don't realise with Tristifer Botley, and it comes down to how people play, and this is where like the discussion around Makoro is probably better. But Botley means you can play a 3 versus 3 and force them not to be able to take the last zone in a 3 versus 3 matchup. But they should still activate their NCU, otherwise they're going to go down on activations. So you can force them to effectively pass, but this gives you a free zone with Triss to use a late assault orders with Greyjoys, which in a Vic list I can see working really well. Of course, would also work with a late We Do Not Sow, any zone replace type effect that Botley might want to introduce. It is a one-off. It's a one-bang kind of like setup combo, and I think once people see it and they get wise to how that works, they'll start to play around it. But there's not much you can do to play around it, right? Like it's just,
Well, I've found that like even either ability can deter your opponent from wanting to take that 3rd zone with if they're... So let's say they go first, so you're going 2, and let's assume you're going all 6 rounds, so you're going to go 2, 4, and 6. Now on round 3 you choose one of these abilities, whichever one is the best at the time, and then round 5 you do the other ability, and you have to time it right. And if that could effectively make your opponent only get all 3 of their NCUs round 1.
Yeah. What's not to like? What is not to like about that? So yeah. Awesome. Right. Well, let's throw him in there. We're trying something new. We're trying something a bit special. So we've got Vic crew, Nuke crew, Bowman, Euron. Wendy, Balon, Triss. Can we make it fully non-neutral as well? 9 points left. A 4 and a 5 makes sense for 9 points. Or we could just go absolute ham and have Silence Men with a 2-point attachment.
Well, what do we got left? We've got
what 9
doesn't
points.
have an attachment?
We've got attachments in everything so far. 9 points left.
I was gonna say 2 points. Could always throw in I forget his name, Jokin, and then the 2-point Jokin, and then get the Widower for free. Now you're getting precision and sundering on 2 units, and then
The whole Sentinel Protector thing, which
yep.
Yeah. I don't think we full have the points for that, do we? 4.
Or the space, I don't think. We
Yeah,
got,
you wouldn't, yeah. Need 10 points for that to work. We have 9. Shit. If we wanted to do 2 units. I mean, my guess would be a 4 and a 5. So, I mean, I'm a big fan of Drowned Men. A 1 of Drowned Men for the heal. I think is just useful. And then a 5-point unit to finish the list off. We could probably go for a Stony Shore Pillager. Or we could go for, like, a Trapper Sandor. Really popular combo at the moment for token control.
Could always consider let's see, Silence Men, 1-point attachment, and then give one of your units outflank.
Yeah, fuck it, why not? See, the moment I put Silence Men in, I always want to add a 2-point attachment in just to go YOLO. Expensive units are bad, but then fun. I mean, if we're going to run... Do we just run Asher with the Silence Men, the 1-point Asher? Or Cryo Resolve, or...
Let me add I'm kind of doing it on my phone here.
Alright.
Because I'm watching the stream on my phone. I didn't want to like double up the audio.
That's alright. I mean, we could go for Baylor Silence Men. There's a bit of a classic.
I was just looking at that.
Yeah.
Baylor, Asha are both good options. Can't do Balon.
Tristan says another bowman with Baylor.
Sorry, I'm looking at commanders. Battle Scars wouldn't be bad. Personally, a combo I love doing. I love throwing Theon and some Silence Men. You know, with their 6-inch move now that they got in the last change. You know, that swift strike. You know, you jump in there from super far away with Vic's auto 6 charge and hit them hopefully really hard. And then you swift strike all the way back. And then if they come towards you, now they're getting next to all of your other stuff.
I momentarily forgot about my favorite thing in the world to put in Silence Men. Ramsey Reek. Diving into a bit of neutrals, but Ramsey Reek and Silence Men. Fueled by Slaughter. Intimidating Presence. Time to just kill some people.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that too. It goes with the theme of, you know, the panic tokens. It gives that intimidating presence. Gives out more panic tokens with Reek.
There we go. There's, I mean, I'm not going to say this is anywhere.
I think, are you going to win some major events with it? No, but I think you could take this list and do really well at a big event.
The thing, what I would go as far as saying is I think that like, probably tweak it. Where those last 9 points really lie, whether or not you take Tristifer or instead like veer towards the Makoro to shut down those retaliation type effects, which I know are really common in the game. This, I think the idea of the list is probably there. Whether or not you do run the double Vic crew and the new Anvic and etc., I think is up for a lot of debate. But if you were running like a double crew list, then this is probably what I would veer towards. Or an 8-tap version, we're swapping the Silence Men Ramsey Reek out, instead looking more at what we were discussing with like a drowned men or like a 5-point utility type unit. But yeah, there's something to try anyway, something for people to take away and think about and try and see what they reckon. But this is it. Like, this is what I like. Is I like experimenting with exciting things that get released. And the thing about the Vic crew, although they are not the most exciting unit in the world, they're exciting enough to make me want to sit down and think about list building. Thumbs up from me right there. Yeah. Ramsey Reekin Reapers. Yep.
I think if any faction is amazing for running, being able to run like a 9-point infantry unit, it would be Greyjoys just because of Balon. That way, if something happens, you're like, oh well, I guess I get a free 9 points coming in on your flank.
Yeah, just the age-old, well, I put an NCU in my list that just made me take a 49-point list whenever I needed to. Is that balanced? Well, we can discuss that whole balance thing another day maybe, but I don't actually think he's that imbalanced, I'll be honest. I don't think Balon's like brokenly too strong or anything like that. He's obviously very good though.
I mean, so good that I think he's an auto include.
Yes. And I think the scary thing is all the stats say he's an auto include. Like, if you actually look at people running Balon, you will not be surprised to hear it's not 100% pick rate, but his pick rate is. Oh, it's been slow. There we go. His pick rate is a very casual 87% for season 4.
What are 13% of you people doing?
Oh, sorry. I just, when you get these images of things, you know how there's 1 in 10 doctors don't know how to do this thing, or 1 in 10 doctors agree with this, or something. It's like, 13% is about 1 in 7, right? So 1 in 7 people, what the hell are you doing?
I know what they're doing. They run 1 list out of 2. Or no, is this factoring only games played, or
this is games
even
played.
submissions?
Yeah. This is just games played.
Okay. Yeah. All right, and then never mind.
There are 7 Greyjoy players in this room. One of them is an idiot. Oh dear. Anyway, Iam says hey. The Booze King says hit like everyone. West Coast Carl says hey Dave, hey Mickey. Hey Carl, hope you're doing well. Balon is getting hit so hard in the next patch. I actually fear this might hurt Greyjoy too much without buffing all the stuff. Yeah, I mean, there is actually a very good argument and discussion that we've kind of had on and off a little bit, but Balon is obviously very good, and he basically appears all the time in virtually everything. But at the same time, it's almost a little bit like he is the faction, right? To the point.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. And it might be to the point where if they do nerf him and they do change him, it will just be absolutely ruinous. We will see. We will see.
Definitely throw a curveball into list building. Though, with that said, I think my stance on 2 or 3 NCUs for Greyjoys would still be 3 NCUs, even without Balon. For me, Greyjoys, they just mesh way better with 3 NCUs. Not that you can't build 2 NCU lists, by no means. I definitely have done it, but it just feels more natural in gameplay.
Yeah. Datalink saying Balon Commander used to be one of my favourites. Yep. I took Balon Commander to the GT when I ran Greyjoys. Used to love Balon. Commander, and now it's. I genuinely say this. I think Balon Commander is virtually unplayable, and that's not to say he's bad. It's just that he got made worse, and Balon NC was just so good that. Like, how does Balon Commander not have a card that brings a unit back? You know what I mean? Like what on earth?
It's actually funny you mentioned that because it's been so long. I'm probably partially one of those 7 people in the room now that I think about it, only because I like Balon Commander so much that I'll make my main list
Bang.
like Vic with Balon, and then my second list is Balon Commander, and obviously, I just, with Balon, I love just running like 4 Reavers, all with, Balon and one with Fueled by Slaughter and the other 3 with Warsworn, so everything's, just healing up the wazoo.
That is the way to do it. The Booze King says, can I send you some pictures of our 400 game? Yeah, I mean, 400-point game. Certainly, by all means, Booze King. Your easiest port of call is to drop them through Discord to me. You have Discord. If you do not have Discord, if you're on Facebook, drop them to me on Facebook. If you're not on Discord or not on Facebook, first of all, how on earth do you know about this show? Second of all, drop a message. What's the best way to do it? Drop me a message on one of those things anyway, and I'll get back to you with an email address that you can send them to. Yeah, I would say send them to the email address that's related to the channel, but don't do that because I don't have access to that because that's like barely contacted by Carlo. So yeah, or barely looked at by Carlo. You can always send it through on the Facebook against to the stats group on Facebook as well. Any of those methods of communication will work. I'm pretty sure I doxed my email address in a previous episode, but I don't mind giving it out to people. Just yeah. All right then. All righty. We'll move on to a different topic though, and one of the things that we usually discuss is the news. In terms of news, obviously, we've had Vic's crew announced for release soon. TM. There is actually a date, I believe. Is it? Actually, I want to say it might. Am I making this up? The 19th of July. Sorry, am I making that up? I'm pretty sure I'm making that up.
Sounds kind of soon, but it's definitely possible. 19th, so in 4 days. That sounds a bit soon, but I mean, anything's possible.
Right, no, Vic's crew is the 6th of September. What was the 19th? I swear something was the 19th of June. Was that maybe the Crownland Scouts? Coming out in 19th of June. Maybe. Oh no, they're 2nd of August. No, I'm just making something up. Maybe I've got something else in my life on the 19th of June. I'm going to have to check out what's happening on the 19th of June now. Maybe it's a Friday. No, I've got nothing on a Friday. I don't do anything on a Friday. Oh well. All right. Yes. So September, which is, 2 months away. Okay. Cool. Crownland Scouts in August. Cool. We'll see where that all goes. But apart from that, there's actually not really been any news. Not much.
Yeah, not that I can think of either.
No.
Like, it's been pretty quiet couple of weeks even, other than like this one unit.
And that kind of leads us into which, is ultimately where we're now all thinking, and what a lot of people are saying. And Elias asks in chat, do you think we're going to have an update this summer? The general feel from everybody, content creators, people in the game, people who try to stay connected, the general feel is we are expecting one in the next month, is the kind of general thing. And by the next month, I mean by the end of August. Nobody knows when it is. Nobody really knows what it will look like. Nobody knows anything about it, at least from what I can tell externally. but that's the general feel. If you talk to anybody who's making content, talk to anybody who's played this game well enough, we are all basically thinking, you know what, we're expecting it in the next month or so. Part of that just is not, like, part of that is fabricated illusion. I want to just add, I don't know when the next patch is. Dave doesn't know when the next patch is. Hits and Crits don't know when the next patch is. Carl, West Coast Bannerman, doesn't know when the West Coast. Nobody knows when the next patch actually is. A lot of it is just kind of gut feel based on where the game is, kind of the... I can't say stagnation, that's not really the right term, but the cycle of the game. Where the cycle of the game is at the moment, we kind of expect a patch. Based on rhetoric as well, we're semi-expecting it to be based around commanders and attachments. Specifically, Free Folk were mentioned in the last patch, but it could be other commanders and other attachments. And I think what we're actually finally going to see is the real value in attachments being brought out. At least that's the hope, is that attachment value is going to be really brought to the forefront. So instead of taking units that we may be adding attachments to, we're going to be wanting to take units because that allows us to take attachments. Which I think is a much... I know, you know, Dave, I know you're a big guy in terms of favouring attachments. You've always wanted to run attachments. We've always wanted to competitively. It's just the case of it's always been a not great idea. You know, we want the characters in the game to be in the game. You know, on the table.
We actually just started a campaign at my local where every single every single unit in your army gains adaptive. Now if the unit already had adaptive, it just, you know, those units are kind of SOL. But every unit gains adaptive because we wanted to encourage every unit to have an attachment all the time. And like you were saying, I think that would be healthy for the game, to just make attachments just clearly like you would want to take them, like just beef them all up. But with that said, I really do believe that they need to change. If you do that, you have to take out this whole killing other attachments. You know, expert duelist. I forget what the name of his ability is, but Vargo, Arya, all these things have to come out.
Sadistic mutilation, is that Vargo's?
That sounds familiar, yeah. But yeah, all of those attachment snipes need to just go away. I've mentioned this in the past. I would be fine with like an expert duelist in a sense, but it would have to be hard to trigger, and I would like it to be like a keyword, kind of like sundering, and it would, you know, that way like an expert duelist can't snipe another expert duelist.
So it's actually
something like that.
You actually hit a nail on the head there, which I think is really important. And with Vargos especially, I think it would be way better if it also kicked in after the attack. So the attack happened and then the attachment died, rather than killing the attachment kind of basically before the attack happens. Because then if it's a defensive attachment, you never get the benefit. You should get that a benefit so you can soften a charge. But hey, then you get stuck in, and yeah, you killed the character after you charged. And yeah, you know, they used their defensive abilities like Shield Wall, but then they died. And at least those type of effects, like you were saying, would then at least give value to the things that are supposed to give you value. There is nothing worse than having a defensive attachment and getting it killed literally before it can use its ability.
Yeah,
like, that's so silly. At least Vargo's is a little bit better in that it kills after, but it being automatic is also very difficult to balance.
And expending, you have to be weakened first, and then you have to expend it, meaning that when they attack you back, they're no longer weakened. Yep. What was the other thing that is the downside to Vargo. He he doesn't have the option like Expert Duelist does to just poke someone, for 1 wound.
Yeah.
It's essentially if the I've run into the problem where like you can't, if I'm remembering correctly, you can't do anything to Unsullied Sword Masters because the weakened token can't be expended.
Yep.
Or placed on them. I forget which one.
You can't. Yeah, they can become weakened, but they can't expend it. Which is like, in a really weird way, it gives more credence to those types of abilities in a way, in that it protects them against those kinds of things. Like the idea of, Vargo can't assassinate someone in Unsullied Swordmasters because the Unsullied Swordmasters are just too good at defending the attachment in them from like a Vargo type assassination. That in some regards, I quite like the thematic of that. But then if I'm an expert duelist, I just walk over and chop his head off.
I've also played around with the idea that Evil Sponge makes a good point with dueling in 40k. If you could like, anyone can challenge. Like if you have an attachment and your opponent has an attachment, you can always challenge them to a duel, so to speak. If they decline, they lose abilities, or I would say 1 ability would probably be more fair, because that would make offensive attachments just kind of blow away defensive attachments. You could also change it. Another idea I played around with is, Expert Duelist happens. And you roll a d3, and if you want, you can have, let's say you roll a 3 on the d3, your opponent will die, or your opponent can either choose to let your attachment die, or whatever number on the d3 is how many people would have to jump in the way to save them. So you would take 3 wounds from that Expert Duelist, or you could just take the 1 and lose your attachment.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would think that if your attachment, like if we're thinking about like on the battlefield, if your attachment really didn't want to duel this guy, the others in the group would, hopefully jump in the way to protect their commander. I think there's a lot of cool little things that CMON could do with the whole Expert Duelist thing. I just don't really care for this like roll on a chance 5-up, especially when it was a 3-up. But I think there's a lot of cool little things that they could do to keep it in the game while not making it like such a feels bad.
Yeah, the thing with 3-up is that it was too common, so you just knew that everyone would do it all the time, and it was feel bad for the roller because you'd take the option and then not roll the 2 in 3, and you'd roll the 1 in 3, and you wouldn't get it, and then you'd feel like, oh shit, now my attachment hasn't done anything or whatever. It feels bad for the person rolling it when it was 3-up, ironically, and now it's a 5-up, it's the person rolling it who it feels bad for. But if they do hit the 5-up, which they should never pick the 5-up, that's a bad choice. And now if they hit the 5-up, it feels really bad as the person defending, because it's like, shit, they made a bad decision and it paid off. It's like all these things. I'm a bigger fan of it being automatic or not. But if it's automatic, there has to be a way that the opponent can interact with it. What's the interaction mechanic? What you're saying there about like sacrificing a number of wounds for it is an interesting way. The idea of, can an expert duelist kill another expert duelist? No. I think if
you roll off,
yeah,
you roll
exactly.
off, and whoever wins the dice roll, the other one dies, and if it's a tie, they're still dueling.
Yeah, or even it can't kill them, but it turns them off. If they're both expert duelists, because the idea is that they don't kill each other. What they do is they remove each other's effect from the rest of the fight because they're too busy trying to fend off this other duelist. Brute was right, by the way. You can actually assassinate people in Unsullied Swordmasters. It's only cannot expend weakened tokens on this unit while it is attacking, not just flat out can't spend weakened tokens on them, which is sad.
You know what? That does make sense because I know, like back in I don't know, 1.5, whenever that was, they had to rule on being able to expend panic tokens for Roos's old cards.
Yeah.
And they counted expending the token not as expending it for the token, but for something else. So I guess, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, loads of stuff there. I mean, the biggest thing, we don't know if the patch is coming, right? But there are loads of changes that everyone would make. The biggest thing being, and the real big thing, is that the balance of the game is pretty good right now. Internal balance is a bit sketchy. You know, we can talk about whether or not we'd run certain things, but like, if you're building lists right now, and I think this might just be me, but when I'm thinking about what I'm going to face, there is one big thing that dominates the conversation, I think, with how you build your list, and it is, how am I dealing and how am I going to win a game against Lance Cavalry, basically. You need to have a strategy for facing off against Lance Cavalry. Be that a good or bad thing, like, that's up to you, but in previous versions of the game, I think, you know, how do I face high activation spam? How do I face this? How do I face Night's Watch? There've always been things that dominate conversations. For me, I think at the moment it's, you know, how do you beat Tully Cav spam? And how do you beat Tywin Knights of Castle Rock? Which is, I don't even think Tywin Knights of Castle Rock isn't even that good a combo, but you still need to know what you're going to do to beat it. They're not the only things you have to think about. But for me, a lot when I'm playing, it dominates the way I think about the game. Probably more so than actually the number of times I get impacted by it. But yeah, I think people want to change. People want to change because I think, you know, it'd be nice to see Night's Watch, not the units so much, but it would be nice to see Night's Watch get a bit of a glow up from the deck, I think. Because the deck does suck now. Too hard, probably.
I mean, it does, but Night's Watch is actually what I've kind of moved on to playing out when I'm not doing like bigger tournaments. Now that I don't feel bad by playing them, I've moved on to them. Because now, were they winning every big event everywhere? No. But they were so good at the casual and semi-competitive level that it just was not fun for anyone, in my experience. So they definitely needed a lot of what they got, but I do think with the tactics deck in particular, it was a little heavy-handed. But even with that said, I've had a lot of success with Night's Watch because of one thing, and that is Gilly. It allows me to build a 6 activation list at 39 points, and that allows me to make my units super beefy. And then what I do with the tactics deck, because now I have Sam and Gilly, I start the game with 4 tactics cards. I get the put one back, or, you know, draw 5, put one back with Gilly, and all I do with the deck is, I activated, play the card. I activated, play the card. I activated, play the card. Sometimes I will play it for its effect, there is occasion where it does feel bad, where you fail that panic and they all fall off. But until that happens, if you just go attach, and your opponent can't make them fall off, it ends up being a little crazy like it used to be. Especially like if you have a tree out there and you run is it Alistair attachment, it gives Iron Resolve. You can really make sure that those cards stay on that, and I think one of their cards now gives Light That Brings the Dawn, I believe, gives +1 morale. So there's definitely a lot of things you can do to mitigate that, but I personally am having a lot of fun with them and doing pretty well with them.
Yeah. I think it's one of the things for me, Night's Watch is still carried, in my opinion, by the quality of the units. Cold Hands is still insane. Like, still, you know, probably the only unit that the only solo unit in the game at 5 points. 4 wounds, for God's sake, and he fairly reliably stands up to some of the hardest hitting things in the game. Donnell NCU is still not so good, in my opinion. I think Vanguard are still brilliant. Shadow Tower Spearman now, low-key, probably one of the best 7-point units in the game. Virtually impossible to kill, and do decent damage output. But I think that's where I start to kind of lose. Like, trackers, I think, are good, by the way. Ranger trackers, solid 6-point cavalry unit. But that's where it starts to fall off for me, is that the quality of the unit depth does dip down pretty hard after that. You don't have, like, veterans are fine, Swarm Brothers are fine, Hunters are fine, Crossbowmen are okay, good, fine. But there's just, there's not really that depth. And then you've got Scorpions and Catapults are just... I hate the design of Catapults. I just don't think they're a positive thing for the game. Even though I think people want them, and I don't actually necessarily think they shouldn't exist. But, like, whatever. Conscripts are actually fine, I think, but, like, you often don't really want to add one to your list at the start of the game, and that kind of sucks. Scorpions, like all the bolt throwers, I think are okay. Like, I think they're okay, but the polarizing nature that they have of, like, certain matchups where they just absolutely dominate, and other times they're just like, meh, it's a vicious panic check. Okay. Is, like, to some extent problematic, and I'm really not a big fan, by the way, and I've said this multiple times on the show before, but anyone new or anyone watching it, and I'm not a big fan of these giant spear throwers and bolt throwers with this kind of, like, I just have an infinite range. I can just play casino and roll some 6s at your cavalry. Oh, you've run Gregor solo. Well, I'll just roll some 6s and I might just kill him on round 1 with absolutely nothing you can do about it. And I think we should be trying to push people away from point effective solos, but that is not the way to do it. Casino to the maximum is not my style.
For me, the big 3 things that I've always kind of had an issue with is anything that gives extra victory points, no matter what, even if it's because, like, let's say old Joffrey or just anything that gave extra victory points for either player. Now, with that said, a little caveat is, I guess if it's an option to where you can just actively not, if it's like a negative like Joffrey was, and you could just actively not run it, I have a little less problem with. But, like, all these Targaryen cards that just give free victory points, Doran, NCU, anything gives extra victory points, I just don't like. I think it adds a level of something to the game to where you only need so many victory points to trigger victory. That, and anytime you're able to bring back or add units, anytime you're able to break that 40-point wall in the game, I think there's plenty of creative space to just change it to be something similar. Like, healing models, I think, is much different than bringing whole new activations on. So if you need to represent a unit or an army or faction getting lots of people because they're a horde, we'll say horde faction, I think healing is that way to go, just because how strong activations are. And then that last thing being kind of like you're mentioning with stone throwers, just that, or even like expert duelists, that ability, whether or not it's too good or not good enough to ever run, that is a feels bad for someone. So feels bad, extra victory points, extra units are like the three big things for me that I don't care for.
I can understand the discussion of extra units, and I think there's a design space to have it in the game. I've always said that, but I also think that you can't just say, "Oh, well, we'll just have something that brings back a unit." There's a space for it. I actually think, we are very close to having a pretty good space with Endless Horde right now. Endless Horde would only need one minor change, in my opinion, to make it a fairly balanced, to the point where it probably even slightly underpowered compared to other versions of similar things. Which is, if the unit that it's on is unactivated, the unit that comes on is unactivated. If it's already activated, the unit that comes on is activated as well. Like, a very simple, like Balon, it stops someone just alpha striking your unit and you not getting to use it, because at least you get something in return that can do something. But at the same time, if you have activated and you've basically suicided your unit in, yeah, you get it back, but you can't just play activation games by suiciding a unit, getting a unit back in, and then having another unit to activate the same round. That is the closest I think that exists, in my opinion, the closest that exists to a balanced effect of like resurrection of a whole unit in the game. Varamir's animals are not very good, but Varamir is almost certainly carried by the fact that he brings so many activations and he gets to resurrect them. I don't think Varamir's that strong right now. Like, I don't think Varamir's that strong, and yet Varamir is still one of the better commanders, probably because purely from an activation control perspective, in which case I agree completely with what you're saying. Needs to be looked at. Balon, obviously, very strong. And that's pretty much all of the returning stuff outside of, like, the cold hands as well. Yeah, they can be balanced, but I do agree with the sentiment of, like, with any of those effects, you walk a very fine line of where is balance. When do they become actually just completely crap? Because what they bring on and the value that they have and what they cost just is never worth it. And being too good of, like, yeah, you just completely OP broken. A really good example, by the way, of something where it's like it walks this weird line of, like, I just don't think it's very good, but it could be, is Yoren NCU for Night's Watch, which brings the conscripts on. It's like, I've never seen Yoren win games for anybody, but I believe Decipher ran Yoren last year at French Nationals, or this year at French Nationals, I can't remember, and he won the event with him, and it's like, half of me sat here being like, but Yoren's crap. Half of me sat here like, is Yoren actually secretly a really good way to win games? You know?
Yeah, I actually run Yoren in a lot of lists. The ability to run Yoren, Sam, and Gilly for 11 points is super strong, because again, it allows Yoren, if you're factoring that you're going to get those conscripts early, you're essentially able to, in your head, mentally prepare that, okay, I have a conscript unit. And it will allow you to beef up your units to a degree that a lot of people won't be able to handle them. Especially like you were saying, like, some of these units are just insanely good. I sent you a list with what I'm currently running for them, but like Shadow Tower Spearmen, insanely good just at face value, not to mention what type of attachments you can put in them, because a lot of the attachments have not changed since we heard from Fabio about how Night's Watch attachments are basically this is not verbatim, this isn't exactly what he said, but it was so long ago. But basically, Night's Watch attachments are a little stronger.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for example, that's why you see a lot of Night's Watch attachments who will have the same exact ability as another faction plus something else. But with that said, you combine something as strong as Shadow Tower Spearman with some of these attachments that have not changed, that we know are clearly better than some other factions' attachments, and it just becomes massively good. But I did want to, before I forget to point it out, Datalink had mentioned something that's kind of near and dear to my heart is Night's Watch didn't need he says that Night's Watch did not need a massive deck nerf. They just needed a few tweaks and go back to 1 vow per unit. I do absolutely miss the vow mechanic part where they just were called vows and they're limit 1 per unit, and you make the way you kind of add a little spice to it is which will encourage people to run named attachments, is if you have a named attachment, the unit's allowed to run two vows on the unit. Or something like that. And I think that in itself would be the best way to go about it. No more like stacking a bajillion effects on one unit, essentially making them equivalent of like 2 points more. You now have to kind of pick and choose between what you're attaching. And if you are going to attach, let's say you're running 4 units, you're only going to have 4 vows attached, unless you're going to run 4 named characters. Now you could have 8. But I mean, you're running attachments in every unit. So I think, I think encouraging attachments would be a good thing. So I just wanted to point that out before it kind of got lost in the comments.
Yeah, no, it's all right. Kurt says Night's Watch woes feel overstated. We're talking like 20 ELO. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it might only be 20 ELO, right? And we look at the main kind of listings here. We've got Greyjoy up at 28 and Free Folk down at -4. And that's been basically the bulk. And that's not the same order. Like, if you look 3 days ago, 2 days ago, you only have to look at like 1 day ago, and the ratings are slightly different. The general theme, though, if you were to take the kind of snapshot, is the top has been Targ, it has been Greyjoy, it has been Baratheon, it's been Martell over the last month, give or take. And Stark's been up there as well. Lannister and Free Folk. Free Folk's been kind of up there before that, but dropped down a bit. Lannister's not really hit that top seed much at all. But that whole spread of factions is 30 points from top to bottom. And the thing is the order of those factions changes almost on a daily basis. That is what I would consider a very balanced kind of setting. The point we're trying to make is Night's Watch are nearly exclusively always 8th. Like, very rarely do we see Night's Watch climb, and very rarely do we see them drop. They are just sat down at 8th. They're not part of the grind that is the top 7. And yeah, Evils also says it's not a lack of balance, it's an issue. And it's the sanding away of faction uniqueness. Now, this is something very interesting that I think me and Dave can talk a lot about, and probably too much, and we probably won't be able to talk about it all today. But one of the biggest... I mean, me and Dave... Like, I can successfully say I've played every commander in the game. I think I've played every unit outside of 1 or 2 of the new ones in the game. I've played a hell of a lot of the attachments as well, and some of them truly are terrible. Dave's played most factions, if not. You've played everyone now, right? Every faction. Yeah. And again, competitively plays a big range of factions in a competitive space as well. Most known for Martells and Greyjoys competitively, but certainly not the only ones you've run that end. But but like,
back at the start, Starks.
Yeah, Starks and some Lannister, right? You did a Lannister phase as well, didn't you?
No, I had a very short Baratheon phase, but
Baratheon,
we had so many people start Baratheon when they came out that I was like, I was never one that wanted to like play something that like everyone else was playing, so I moved away from them pretty quick.
But yeah, so like the point is that like, if anything, the one criticism, and Mikkel says it the game is quite stalled right now. We need a bit of a shake-up. The biggest thing in this game is the characters. The characters and the IP you can draw from, and the difference in those characters. And Evil is right. The thing is, you look at some of the characters, and the characters themselves don't have character. Right? They don't feel unique. They don't feel particularly interesting. And that's not to say they aren't, but it's like the Rainbow Guard, like Rainbow Guard, a perfect example, actually, aren't they? You've got 8 characters in the game, and yet you probably can't tell me. I see how good your knowledge here, Dave. Do you know what Robar the Red's abilities are?
No. I do know, I believe he's a 2-point.
He is a 2-point. He comes with Furious Charge, and you know what? I can't even remember the other one. Like, but that's the point. This is like Robar the Red. In theory, like most people who know the lore, most people know the books, they'll know the names of like the Rainbow Guard or the King's Guard. But we genuinely can't really tell you like some fucking abilities. Who cares? Like it's so nondescript because it's not really unique. Reckless Strikes, that was it. For anyone wondering, but like, yeah, Red Powell says Robar's abilities useless, but that's it. Like, this is the kind of thing you want. You want to go, well, I don't remember exactly what his abilities are, but I know that they are unique. Whereas at the moment, I'm like, Robar, he comes with Furious Charge, which is like new, and millions of other characters, and Reckless Strikes, so he was 1 point Dario, but cost 2 points. Like, and that's what you don't want. You don't want characters that should be unique just kind of be copy and pastes of elements of other people. It's almost like they narrowed the number of abilities down in the game to make it more balanced, but at the same time they lost a little bit of the soul of factions and characters. I'm a little bit worried we've seen that more and more in the last kind of patch or two. And this is the eternal problem with the competitive player. I cannot complain because basically the numbers on the page are the closest they've ever been. Ignore Boltons and to some extent ignore neutrals. The other 8 factions are within 40 points and are well within 40 points basically the whole time the game is played now. That's like very, very, very little in terms of balance difference.
I think that's a good indicator that for balance, what really just needs to be done is you pick, I don't know, one thing per faction that you think might be a little too good. Let's say Balon. No big changes on the top end. And just a lot of these things that are not good, you give them a small, I'm talking small little buff, and just bring kind of the floor up and leave the ceiling where it's at.
Actually,
and I think
you've hit the nail on the head there, right? As a perfect example of exactly what you said to really highlight it. Stormcrow Dervishes had a 1 morale increase from 6 to 5 most recently. I genuinely think they're great now.
Yep. Just small, like one little, like even if it, because I know let's just assume one patch every 6 months. I know this next patch is probably already set in stone, but let's just say it wasn't. This next patch, you fix like one major kind of thing in each faction, and you give it a small debuff, small. Everything that is just simply not being played, like a lot of these King's Guard and Rainbow Guard and things like that, you give them a small little tweak, a small little buff. Nothing huge. Well, let's just argue like half a point, a quarter of a point worth of an ability bump, and you leave it at that. And I think, yeah, there'll be some growing pains for the next possibly 12 months where people will feel like things aren't being fixed quick enough, but we'll eventually hit that super sweet spot where it's as close as we could ever hope for it to be. Because I think it's a lot of these wild changes that really throw the game out of flux. Like, let's say Night's Watch going from arguably one of the best factions to now, like you were saying, reliably number 8 all the time because of, in my opinion, the tactics deck. I think all the other changes were pretty spot on, were pretty needed. I don't remember every last little change, but I just know when I'm playing Night's Watch, the only real change that I actively notice is the tactics deck. But it did need change, so I definitely don't blame them for changing it. It was a little too nutty the way it was before. Now, if you're not playing it a very specific way, it's almost, to a lot of people, it feels unplayable, or it falls into that one of those 3 categories I mentioned. That's the feels bad. You feel that one panic and boom, all of it's gone. So.
Jessica says, is there an upcoming patch? We don't know. We think there is, but we don't know. Why would someone play Ramsey when you can play Drogo? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, neutral Sandor with only threaten was super disappointing. Yeah, incredibly so. Like, just no, in my opinion, I'm not trying to have a go at the designers here or anything, but it reeks of a lack of imagination. You know, it's a safe thing.
They could have easily have had something like they do with Rickon and Osha, with Sandor and Arya.
Yeah.
Where you have to, or I shouldn't say have to run them together, but let's just say Sandor could be run by himself, but if you want to run Asha, or I keep saying the wrong name, Arya, would have to be run in Sandor's unit, much in the same way that you could run Rickon without Osha, but why would you not?
Yep.
And then have like a thematic ability where, Sandor is doing the heavy lifting, but Arya, who you get for free for taking Sandor, is doing a little extra to help, because her like assassinating ability just does not make sense thematically, because if I'm not mistaken, in the book she hasn't even like become an assassin.
No.
I believe it ends where she's like being trained.
Yes, for the last bit in the lore, if I remember rightly, she's still in effectively Bravos learning.
Now, I could see like a different Arya being released that says like, if you run Jaqen, then once per turn you may quote unquote give a name, and then Jaqen can do some assassinating.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I would say I would be in favor of that, because again, I don't like the whole sniping attachments idea. But if we're talking thematically, like, Arya shouldn't be the one doing this. It should be Jaqen or Sandor doing the heavy lifting.
Also, I want to pick up on this comment here. How many commanders across factions share the same tactics cards abilities? You say most. There was, I can't remember it now, and we won't cover this fully today, Evil, but there was actually an analysis that somebody did. I can't remember who it was, but they actually looked at, I think it might have been Corellian. Yeah, it might have been Leon. But basically, we looked at all of the cards in the game and looked at copies and what wasn't copies, etc., and did a bit of analysis of what was actually repeats and not repeats, uniqueness, all of that stuff. Some factions are incredibly non-unique, and some are relatively unique in comparison. So yeah, and the complete misplay on Rorge and Biter, which is another example of like they tried to be unique, and then we saw when it was designed and it was released, and Rorge and Biter are the most uninspiring combination of attachments in the game. And it all stems from, ironically, the exact same idea that you've just mentioned there, you have to take one to unlock the other. But you look at Rorge and you pay 2 points for something that's like actively not good, and that gives you a 1 point attachment with something that is actively just bad when you've spent 2 points on Rorge. Like, oh, you get gang up on a different unit. Okay, but you've just spent 2 points of attachments on a different unit. So this just... And then an insight and elusive escape don't combo with anything. Like, I just don't see where this is supposed to work. Like, the only unit I'd want to run Rorge in is Stormcrow Dervishes. And even then, I'm like super dubious whether or not this is actually good. And even then, that doesn't even fucking combo with Gang Up. So, like, what was the point? So, yeah. But yeah. Anyway. I think, you know, one of the things that hurts us here, be careful what you wish for. We strive for years to retain balance. We have balance. But at the same time, and this might just be a personal feeling, and I want to make this abundantly clear, I've never seen such a malaise of kind of like, who cares? You know, I'm playing the least I've played ever in the game's history since I picked it up. I'm playing the least I've ever played. Partially that's because we're not playing much physically. Locally, I'm not even going to the games club as much as I used to because of life. And, you know, life gets in the way. Life gets in the way for everybody, right? And that's not a, you know, kind of big difference. But, you know, a lot of people who used to play the game just aren't. We haven't had the replacement new blood. And it kind of feels, everyone just kind of knows it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like everyone's in a position, at least from what I remember. A lot of people who I'm used to dealing with, the circles we move around in, we're just kind of like, yeah, it's fine. Game's good. But also I'm not like, yeah, game's amazing, let's play it. Just kind of like, yeah, it's good. You know, I enjoy playing it when I'm there playing it. It no longer dominates every thought of my mind because I'm like, oh my god, how do I do this, that, and the other? Because I think, I don't know, it might be different regions, different feelings. Yeah, definitely true. And different communities, right? Communities who are newer to it and players that are newer to it are going to be more excited. You know, look at the hits and crits guys. At this point, I will add, in those of you who didn't realise or didn't recognise, this lovely T-shirt from Hits and Crits. Love the material. Material I like. My wife absolutely hates it. She hates the material. And so when I put this T-shirt on, she won't touch me, which is useful. But you know, communities like that really, you know, striving, lots of new players, and they're really enjoying the game. Powell in there saying in Poland, you know, people there getting into it. Yeah, I think it's fresh blood, and if you've got fresh blood, I think there's a lot of things for them to explore, and that is going to drive any community, I think, to be more excited. I think it's just a shame that we don't have the fresh blood elsewhere, which is just that's not a comment on the game. It's just more the communities we have. But yeah,
our local has stagnated a little bit, but for the most part, it's doing pretty good. I was quite surprised with the turnout we had for our qualifier. Was a lot lower than we expected, because we have probably 24 people if like everyone were to show up. Not counting like some of the people that play so casually. I don't really count some of those some of the people that, like, you know, you rarely ever see. But like, we have like 3 different groups. One that comes from just over the border in Wisconsin. We have a bunch of the people from the city, and a lot of people from like the outskirts of the city, and we all meet usually at one of 2 shops. It's just so happened on the day of the qualifier, almost everyone from the Wisconsin group had other things going on that weekend, which hurt our numbers. But for the most part, our groups, you know, was growing really fast, really quickly. Now it's kind of stagnated, but I mean, it's stagnated at a healthy number, I would say. So
I was talking to someone the other day saying, asking me about, oh, you know, is it just because the number of players in your group has lowered? And is that part of it? No, I can successfully say that that is not true for my group. My group, I'm not going to the club at the moment. Still in contact with them all. We aren't playing song, but that's for different reasons, partially. But the number of players in my group has always been incredibly low. Myself, Carlo, Dan, our friend John, and our old friend Rob. We're only 5 people in our direct group that actually played with one another. We've actually had an increase in player numbers. We now have a kind of wider group of about 8 players that might come down to the club. Life gets in the way, of course, but actually one of the biggest things is we just don't play song as much. For other reasons than the game itself. But yeah, it's just we never had a big group, and we actually have a bigger group now than we ever have. And every one of them will play song. Like, they do all play song. It's just that we don't play song at the moment. And that's because all of the local players, even some of the newer ones, get that same vibe. But hey, that could be us propagating it. Yeah, it's a difficult thing. I think the other thing is we're all waiting for tactics, I think, a little bit. We're all waiting for the next big thing to actually be announced. And this year has felt, perhaps for other players, this year's felt very slow for releases.
Yeah.
Like, very slow. I don't actually know if it has been.
I feel like at one point I was spending like an insane amount of money on song because I collect every army. And, I try to do at least, with some exceptions, but I try to do at least 2 of every unit. And I feel like lately it's been almost nothing. Like a box here, a box there.
Yeah. It's weird. Like, I don't even think that the releases have been that slow. It just feels slow, do you know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway, your event, obviously prize support there, that I've had up on screen now for a while, which is great to see. Was any of this donated from Simon?
Nope, that is 100% donated by Small Council Radio.
Good stuff. If you guys don't know what Small Council Radio is, it's the radio show that this man over here actually hosts. So if you've not heard Small Council Radio, then check it out on Blog Talk Radio. Is that
Blog Talk Radio.
Yeah.
I mean, you can find it on pretty much everywhere.
Yep.
Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, all that stuff. We haven't made a video or we haven't done an episode in quite a while. We're kind of going through a restructuring with the hosts. Right now, the only hosts that can really commit are myself and Spencer. Just lots of people have lots of things going on in their life. So, I don't know, maybe there might be applications out there to get some new blood into the show. I'm now in a position where I can start back up. Things have been insanely hectic this year, as those that have been kind of following us have been listening to. I've made like 3 episodes in a row where I was like, all right, we're back for good. And then there'd be a break. All right, we're back for good, I swear. All right, a break. But to give you a very, very quick cap on that, that would be because our car broke, then our van broke, then our car broke, then our AC broke, then our fridge broke, then our mower broke. Now we have a huge crack in our foundation, and the massive rain we just got leaked. Yeah, it's been, not to get like super religious on anyone there, but God has definitely blessed us, and we've been able to take care of all this stuff. So don't worry about us. We're doing good. But it's been a ride getting all this stuff done, and I'm not exaggerating about any of that. That all happened. We have a brand new fridge now, brand new mower. We have the people coming in probably sometime next week to fix the crack in the foundation. But that is why, I promise, it is not because I have any less interest or enthusiasm for the game. That combined with just some personal stuff, I've been really trying to spend a lot more time with the kids, which unfortunately takes up Saturdays, which is our gaming day. Saturdays, I've been taking the kids to go play Pokemon. I find it fun. I like Pokemon. It's definitely not like something that, I would have ever chosen out of all the games that I've played or want to play, but it's fun. It definitely brings back some memories because I used to play the Dragon Ball Z card game before it got just killed. Before Bandai decided they were going to yank the license out from under Panini and then kill the game and create their own game called Dragon Ball Super. But yeah, so short little description. But for the future, I think for now it's just going to be me and Spencer kind of doing it once a week, probably Saturdays. Or sorry, not Saturdays, probably Fridays. But we'll get more on that to you guys soon. And like I said, if you are interested and would like to potentially join Small Council Radio, you don't need to be some super expert or super awesome player. You just need to be committed and you need to be knowledgeable, if that makes sense. You need to know what's going on. The last thing I need is to have a pep talk before the thing starts to explain everything that that has happened in song. But you don't need to be some amazing player. I don't know if any of you guys are OG listeners, but that was one of the best parts about Small Council is we used to have ranging all the way from the super casual to the super competitive. We had people like Chris, who is an amazing guy. I still talk to him, but he's on to Marvel Crisis Protocol.
Mm-hmm.
That's where he went. But he's like the casual of the casual, YOLO, one NCU because NCUs are stupid. Yeah, awesome guy. Ranging from him all the way to Brett, amazing player, very good at the game. So if you're interested, you don't have to be an amazing player. You just have to be committed, and I need to be able to know that you'll be able to at least do every other week, sort of a thing. Every week is not usually a requirement. It's just what me and Spencer are probably going to have to do for a little bit. Anyways, little rant over. You were talking about prize support.
Yeah, it's okay. It's obviously great to see the prize support. Obviously, Small Council Radio supporting with all of it. And again, one of the things we point out, not just celebrating winners. It's not about who wins events. Don't get me wrong, it's nice. Winning events is good, but supporting the whole hobby aspect side. Other aspects of the game that people might play the game for, such as. I've played. Certainly, I know that Americans actually. This is something that you really covet. Some people in the UK are a bit like this in the UK communities, but I know in America it's being the person who killed the most shit is people love that. There's a few people in the UK who aim for that every year kind of thing, but in America it's it feels like 50% of the people there want to be who killed the most shit. So yeah.
Sometimes when I see the way it is over by you, the way people play, sometimes I feel like I was born in the wrong place because I feel like my playstyle, minus the NCU part in some factions, I feel like a lot of my playstyle matches a lot of those from overseas a bit more because I do a lot, especially with my Martells. I think I do a lot more of kind of what you do, make you with your free folk. Maybe not to the extent because it's two different factions, but the whole, blocking things, attacking where you need to, get off and just focus on that win, focus on those objectives, is kind of 90% of my wins with Martells.
Yep. And then, as Evil says in chat, blood for the blood god. So some people just want to kill things, and don't get me wrong, I know why. Killing things is fun. Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it's obviously great to see. And in case anyone didn't know, they've won the regionals that he had. But yeah, you know, it's great to see that the regionals are still going. It's great to see that people are still enjoying it as well. And you know, more people at Nats, which I think is obviously, credit where credit's due. I enjoyed Nats last year, outside of one or two small problems, which were around the pre-organisation of the event, more or less. I actually think the event was really good fun last year. So, and the weekend itself had very few issues with. So, you know, it's good to see. I hope that continues this year. And I'm still potentially looking at maybe coming over again, change dates and stuff, but closer to the time. Yeah. We were going to touch on some list submissions as well that had come in for Lysine Pirates. Shall we go through and have a look at some of these?
Yeah, we could do that. I might need you to buffer the page
That's
before you talk about it, because
fine.
everything's lagging on my end as far as video.
That's fine. What I can do is I can send you the list in chat, because I have them stored. So this was a challenge we set in the last episode, and I'm going to take them one at a time. I've got 2 lists here to start us off, and we're probably not going to get through everyone in detail, so I'll just kind of load them up as I go. But the first one is a Gregor list. It is Gregor in the Lysine sellswords with Knights of Castle Rock. We have Clegane Brigands. We have crossbows with Tyrion. Pretty, you know, classic combos within the list here. And we run Tyburn? That's not a thing. Tywin.
You're saying
Kyburn. And Shay. There we go. This is the 40-point list. Load it up on thing. So it's a relatively fresh Lannister list with some Lysine sellswords and Gregor in. I think it's okay. It's alright. I don't think this makes the most out of sellswords as a Lannister list could, but I think it's probably as close as you might get to getting maximum efficiency out of them. Got the classic. And this actually really stems back to something I always say about Lannister list building right now, which is there's a lot to this list that I think has credence. We can talk about the value of it. But my kind of whole thought pattern and the thing that just dominates this list to me, Knights of Castle Rock Tywin. Like, that's the thing you're scared of. Those are the things that you actually have to be worried by. The commander choice, the NCU choices elsewhere, the other units in the list, like they're all something that matters. Tyrion Crossbowman is a perfectly good combo, and allows him to set up with battle plan, etc. But for me, the thing that dominates is the Tywin Knights of Castle Rock combo. If you can deal with that and survive that, I think the rest of the list can probably be dealt with. Maybe I undersell the rest of the list, but that's just my thoughts. I don't know what you think about it, Dave.
I think, I mean, Gregor does give him that little bit of that boost with the 2 auto wounds to hopefully get those pillage, to make taking off a rank much easier. So I guess I could see it there, not being weakened. So let me just refresh myself on the pillage. Is it
same as
restore wounds and roll its highest attack? Okay. So I would say not being weakened, so 7 dice, probably 8 dice with the pillage mechanic. Hitting on 3s, can't be weakened, 2 auto wounds. I could definitely see that. The only thing that kind of stood out to me was the Tyrion. Now, granted, there is no other infantry unit to put the Tyrion in, but that counter strategy is going to be a lot less useful in that ranged unit. I'm sure a big part of it's for the battle plan, but that counter strategy is nothing to to let go to waste. And having to be in short with a crossbowman unit, I suppose if you want to try to get those rerolls, definitely a viable option. But with only 4 combat units, I think the last thing I want to do is get my crossbowmen that close to anything. So I would say I think it's decent. The only thing out of place to me kind of seems Tyrion, and if we're talking Lannisters in general, probably Gregor would be the best choice. Just like I said, that those 2 auto wounds really do help get the unit those pillage tokens.
Fair. I'm going to be really difficult for you now. Bearing in mind there's a few lists to get through. So I just want you to kind of pick a number out of thin air, but ultimately base it on what you think. What would you give this out of 10? There's going to be a few more lists we see, so, don't have to be generous. If you think, bearing in mind your rating out of how well do you think it uses the sellswords, do you think there's other ways to use them, which we'll get on to? Out of 10.
Now, am I rating the whole list or just the
whole list,
who
but
got
also
put with them?
The whole list, but also like specifically around 1 to 10, does it make good use of sellswords, or just removing sellswords from the list actually just make it better? If removing sellswords makes the list better, then that's a 1. Replacing with any other 5-point unit. 10 is like
any other
10
any
is
other
like
5-point unit. Probably not any other 5-point. Wouldn't just simply make it better. At least not for a commander, because obviously you're not going to run mercenaries with Gregor and lose out on that free point. But now, small little thing I'm going to say before I start grading these, I have always been known to grade hard, because for me, and the reason I grade hard is because nothing should ever be a 10. Like if you're throwing out 10s willy-nilly, then you're really not giving things fair grades. So generally what a lot of people will do when they ask me this, they'll just add 1 to the score I give, because that's probably what most people would grade it. I would give this a 6.
Okay. 6 it is. I'm keeping it as is. I like hard grading. I'm a big fan of hard grading. 1 up in my book, Dave. Cool. 6 for that one, Edgehopper. We've got another one. We're going to fly through these a little bit faster. So we've got the Stark one up next. So this is a Rickard Karstark. And I will say, Rickard Karstark with Lycian sellswords straight away. So I looked at that and was like, my man is after my heart. I think Rickard Karstark is the way to go. I love the potential double down on the healing, double dipping, and just getting maximum value out of things like that. I think is so good. So yeah. That being said, Rickard Karstark, Lycian sellswords, House Karstark Spearman, Rickon Osher, Shaggy Dog, Tully Cavaliers, Karstark Loyalists with surprise Bolton Flayer out of nowhere, Caitlin, Arya, and Roderick on the NCUs. I'll let Dave kind of process quickly. You know what? I really like the idea of this list. I don't know if it's that good, and it annoys me that we've kind of just stuck a unit of House Tully Cavaliers in there because, Tully Cavaliers are good. But I really think that Bolton Flayer House Karstark Loyalist, you know what? I've not seen people do that. It wasn't within the brief for this week. I wasn't interested in seeing weird 1-point attachments making lists. But you know what? With the Lycian sellswords, Rickard Karstark, good combo. Karstark Loyalist, Bolton Flayer actually could have some synergy, some nice stuff there. I think Karstark Spearmen are great. especially with Rick on Usher. I like it. I like this. I like the design idea. It's not what everyone does. It's a bit different. It's a bit unique. And that's what we want from these kind of little things that we're setting challenges to people. We want people to be innovative and bring new ideas to the table. I think there's a little bit of that going on here, and I like that. What do you reckon?
I think the combination with Rickard is definitely arguably the best in Starks. You can make a case for Great John, I think, but the only downside, or the only thing that kind of keeps me away from Starks is the fact that the big thing about the Soul Swords is the highest attack die.
Yes.
What do we know about Starks? They have more than enough highest attack die to go around to everybody, everywhere, all the time. That one little thing aside, I love the, like you were saying, the doubling up on the healing. That and Rickard has, let me pull it up here, the Karstark Retribution for more healing. You could really make this list super annoying. You got the Tully Cav for, doing Tully Cav things. The only other thing I'm not a huge fan of in the list is, I know a lot of people are going to be, indifferent about this part, but 3 NCUs, and not because I believe that Starks in general don't need 3 NCUs. I think actually they lean more to wanting 3, but a need for vengeance, needing or allowing your opponent to activate another NCU, especially if they have 3. Really hurts you and almost makes this card, unless you're going for start of the round attack, kill something, almost makes the card like you don't want to play it, because now one of your NCUs is probably not taking the board on that turn. Now I guess you could play it on a turn where you were probably not already going to get a spot if your opponent's going first. But anyways, with that said, I would still probably lean towards giving it a 7.
Okay.
I do like they have 3 Karstark units in it. I'm a little indifferent about the Bolton Flare. I almost think I would rather have the Bolton Dreadfort Captain for the Prey on Fear rather than the Spread Fear. But that's just me. I think with all the healing you're already doing, it for me it would just be nicer to have more healing rather than an effect that's going to do the opposite and deal more panic.
I guess you miss out as well with the Flare. One of the things that I liked in the list, but really thinking a little bit more about it, you don't have anything like an Intimidating Presence unit to bounce the Flare test onto. If you have a Flare bouncing Spread Fear onto an IP, that feels pretty good because you're now doubling down on a few abilities. This just feels a little bit isolated, so I do agree a little bit with you there.
That and the Spread Fear is a one-time order, whereas the Prey on Fear is going to trigger each time you someone fails a panic. So if you get into combat with them and attack them, they fail, you heal 2. You then come in from the side with Shaggy Dog, attack, they fail, you heal 2, and so on.
It kind of does synergize with the Unleashed Ferocity as well, so when they're lower ranks, they get the tokens. So they can get low, then start getting the tokens to then actually bring themselves back up. And they'll be hit again, drop low, and I can see that kind of working a little bit. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Okay. Good. That's good. Interesting change. All right then. Next one up, and this is from RW360, who has been giving us lots of lists. This is a Baratheon list. Now, this is a little bit more wild. And I like it in its own way, right? So this is Renly Charismatic Heir in Stag Knights. We've heard that combo before. This runs those Lycian Sellswords. with Loris. 1 point Rainbow Guard. Okay. Riders of Highgarden with a Glory Seeker. Thornwatch with Brienne the Blue. Elena, Courtney, Marge. Now, the big thing for me here, and the reason I like this, is the combo with Loris, right? This is a list that is built around a combo. Do I think this? I'm going to be very honest. I do not think this list is a very good list. But for me, the thing that I like about this is someone took the brief and went, how can I make sellswords work? But then played around them in a way I didn't think someone would play around them. Which is they went, right, I'm just going to run a unit of sellswords. I'm going to be aggressive with them in this Renly list. But I'm going to make them do more damage without actually increasing the amount of damage they do during attacks. And I thought that was really cool. I thought the idea was awesome. I think it plays around the idea of what you're trying to do, healing with Renly. I love the concept of what the list tries to achieve. I don't think the list is very good at doing it. I'm not going to sit here and say this is going to set the world on fire. But if someone's, again, like, they're bringing a new way of using something to a list and trying to build it in a way that differs from faction to faction. And for that alone, the ingenuity they're bringing, for me, is what I want. And it brings that ingenuity. Deadly Bloom. Lysine Sellswords. Attack, heal, deal a wound back. You know. What's your thoughts on this one, Dave?
I think, personally, I don't really like it. I
That's
do
fair,
like the
fair.
creativity.
Yep.
I do like the creativity of it. The problem is just coming, I don't know how much experience they have with Greyjoys, but you really need to get those pillage. If you don't have those pillage, it's not really do much, and that Deadly Bloom will not trigger a pillage token, if I'm not mistaken.
They healed regardless of pillage. They
No,
always
but what I'm
heal.
saying is you won't get, like, let's say that heal one, but then you deal one from Deadly Bloom. That one you deal with Deadly Bloom doesn't count towards the attack, which means that you
Yes.
won't get, like, let's say you were 1 wound short of getting a pillage. That Deadly Bloom's not going to make the difference. And without any pillage to start off, yes, you're going to heal and deal, but you're a 5-up save, 7-up morale. You really want to get that first pillage really quickly, which means you're going to want that offensive ability, even if it's just a little bit of an offense. Like, you could probably run an attachment that had like 1 offensive and 1 defensive ability, but you're going to run into the problem that even without 1 pillage giving you that that +1 morale buff, and then getting that second one's going to be hard even to then give you the highest attack die and the +1 die. Do I think it's terrible? No, I like the creativity. I just, I worry that the unit in a 4-unit list, where you already have Riders of Highgarden needing to stay kind of out of the battle to attack something at a key moment, Thornwatch being another unit that's going to want to kind of stay back a bit and then attack at a key moment. Your only real anchor being your Stag Knights. These Lysine Sellswords need to be somewhat of an anchor, or at least something that, is going to have much different role. But you're going to have to pick something to go at your opponent, and it's probably going to be the Sellswords, and they're probably going to get hit really hard. And so that's kind of my fear. I also kind of see with what they're trying to do with the NCUs. And like the healing, because when they heal, they'll deal. The thing with Courtney is, at least in my experience, you don't run Courtney because you want to heal. You run Courtney because you want to shut down their NCUs, because the last thing they're going to want to do is take a zone to let you heal. especially if you have things that are going to make more use of that heal on top of how much he's already going to heal. Because potentially healing 5, is it, with Courtney,
Yeah.
if you roll a 3, and then also dealing 1 when you get healed with Deadly Bloom. I mean, you're just, putting salt on the wound for anyone that would want to take a zone. So you can't rely on Courtney's healing, which then just leaves Marjorie. And then them attacking. But if your Stag Knights or are in combat, more often than not, you're going to want to attack with the Stag Knights with, let's say, a free attack. Then you are the Cell Swords to get that heal because you're attacking to deal. Now, is it possible? Yeah, you could. But generally, especially if it's later in the game, the Stag Knights are going to be hitting much harder than the Cell Swords would. Now, if I'm not mistaken, though, before I forget to mention it, because I'm sure, wouldn't be doing the list justice if I didn't, Renly Baratheon does have Embolden. He'll give that Cell Sword unit that +1 from him. So that's not something to forget about. And it will be nice, let's say, if they can get that charge off on a certain unit, get that first pillage while still remaining within 6 of Renly. It's a 5-up morale, and now we're talking. So I think it has potential, but I think in a lot of matchups, because they have only one good anchor unit, that will make the Cell Swords kind of suffer.
Fair. Yeah. Where would you rate this out of 10? Is this one of those, like, you rate it low, but then it's it's one of those, it gets a lower rating, but actually you're more inclined to try it because it's interesting? Or is it one of these just, give it a 3?
I would give it a 4.
Okay.
But I would also potentially bump it to a 5 for the creativity.
Okay. We'll go for a 4. Let's be honest with ourselves, but I'll put a 5 in brackets. but this is
sorry for everyone. Sorry for everyone that had to have me for their submissions. When like other episodes, they're not grading as hard, and everyone's like, "What are you doing? You don't know this game at all."
But this is the thing. Like, we set a brief and we set an idea, and it's what we want to see people bringing things to the table. And I do think there's some credence to what's been brought to the table here, even though the list itself might not be that interesting that good. It's an interesting idea, and like all these things, if this actually gets someone to run this as like a, put it on the table and enjoy a game with Baratheons and do this, and they actually get value out of it and have a good game, yeah. I make them for the fun over being good. Exactly. If this creates a fun game and a fun experience, that's what you want. That's what I'm all for. Now, the next list is it's another Stark list, and this is from a friend of mine, Vlad. For those of you who know Vlad. This is a classic, may I say. And this is a lot more along the theme you were previously talking about of Great John Umber, right? And that you could run this kind of list with Great John Umber. Now, this is like a full-on competitive kind of like ideaed list. This is a Great John Umber 9 activation. Lycine Cell Swords with Great John Umber. Berserker Naked, Stormcrow Mercs, Rickon Osher, Shaggy Dog Greywind, Ariat Sansa, Rob NCU. What do you think about this?
So I actually it's the reason I call out Great John Umber in Lycine Cell Swords in the previous discussion with the other Stark list is not because I'm some big brain with about Cell Swords. It's because in my last game of the qualifier event we just had was against a Stark player who had Great John Umber in Lycine Cell Swords, and he was, as far as that unit in particular, was like whooping my butt up and down because of how good the combo is. But let me just refresh my memory. Great John Umber has the auto 6 charge, take D3 wounds, and he has overrun, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And he actually did do that. He charged into me, wrecked my face, and then overran into another unit. I was like, what are you doing? Like, these Lysine sellswords, like, why? But I mean, it was working. So for this list, let's see, Stormcrow with Rick and Asha.
Fine, isn't it?
I would say so. That's the cool thing about Great John Umber is you can kind of, I mean, you kind of really want, in a lot of cases, the Tully Cav because of his berserker tactics,
Yeah.
but you really don't need them because he has, he himself has an auto 6 charge. It really helps you not need cavalry, and if you have this much pressure with combat units, you don't always really need a ranged unit. Generally, though, I would say that you need at least one or the other. Like running no range and no cav is a bit risky. But when you're running 9 acts, it's
Who cares?
9 activations in the game nowadays. When like I would say at least in person in most tournaments, you're not seeing more than 8 outside of like free folk. 9 acts is huge. And then let's not forget about the very last thing on there, and that's the Rob Stark.
Yeah.
Outflanking something. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people not like think of it. You know, they think, oh, there's no outflank unit. Okay, well, Rob Stark essentially gives you outflank whenever you need it, as long, you know, with like the old school outflank. And permanently, if I'm not mistaken, permanently buffs the unit that he outflanks.
Double tokens. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I honestly will, even with my kind of, I don't know if we call it a gripe, but you know, with there being no range and no
Proper cav.
cav, I think enough answers are in the list to cover that. I actually would probably give this an 8.
An 8. High praise. High praise. Yeah, I think this list is pretty good, probably. It's not exactly how I would build it. I'd probably move points around a little bit here and there. Now, Vlad actually straight up just told me this. Now, Vlad's not a Stark player. Vlad plays a few different factions, but he said he's played this 4 times, and he runs it exactly like you'd expect, like a Suicide Squad. It's just going to run in and try and get as many kills as it can before it dies. And he's really... he's disappointed in the Berserkers. You know, I think one of the things he says is that the Berserkers never seem to really pull their weight, but the Great John Umber with Lysine sellswords is amazing. 1-2, lost 2, so he's played it 4 times and he's got a 50% with it. Not the biggest start player, he's mostly a Lannister player, if anything. And if he would play it again, he would change it. But the grand kind of scheme of the list in terms of 9 acts, Great John in the Lysine sellswords, and he would focus on the 2 Berserkers being the change points, I think is really interesting. It doesn't change the favour of the list. I actually think, like, from exactly what you were saying there, could you take the 2 Berserkers out and just add, and I know this is probably a little bit heinous to say, but could you add in Chrono Trackers as a 5-pointer replacement? You can use 7 points for maybe Outriders with a 1-point attachment, or an 1-point attachment in your Chrono Trackers. You know,
I was almost even thinking, because if you take out a Berserker, you put in the trackers for 5 points, it gives you 7.
Yep.
You could even, I don't know how much success a lot of people have been having with them. You run the new Winterfell Guard for 7, free attachment. You run,
you're a mirror for 1 point for hidden traps. 2 hidden traps in the list.
Yep. Or even you could throw Rickon and Osha into that unit instead, and then throw something that mixes with the mercs a little better. I mean, Rickon and Osha work really well with mercenaries, but I think, I don't know. I think there's a lot of wiggle room, a lot of play you can do with that 12 points there.
Mhm.
And to not like jump off topic too much, but Berserkers, I don't know. I missed the previous edition. I know a lot of people didn't like the last one, but that was probably my favorite edition of Berserkers ever, of any version of them.
So I don't know if you just missed that in chat, and I completely forgot they even existed. Ravagers, Umber Ravagers Cavalry, for 7 points.
You could do that too.
Yeah.
I was almost even thinking, because almost forgot to mention, if you keep them all infantry, it really gives Arya a lot of options, because Arya can't work on Cav. The more infantry you have, the more options you have to play around Arya's 2 free maneuvers.
Yeah, I mean, there's some changes here that I think are worth exploring, but yeah, I mean, of all the lists we've seen so far, in terms of competitive viability, this is probably the most competitive viable one, with a few changes that you've got. And that's interesting, it's the most competitive one, but it's probably the one that's got the most space in it to actually still be quite creative with how the list works. So yeah, enjoy that one. The last one we have is from Timu, and this will be the last one because I know that Dave has to get away soon. Timu sent us in a Targ list. Now, I will have to quickly build this and send it to Dave as we discuss it. But it is a Marcelin commander. Probably surprising nobody. People love this guy. And controversially, in Golden Company Swordsman. Remember those guys? Those units that used to exist? They're back. He runs Lysine Sellswords, and look, I love this because he runs Belwas 1-pointer in those Sellswords. Man is after my heart. Belwas should be in this game more, and he's not, and it makes me sad. Naked Screamers, Naked Outriders, and a unit of Freedmen, classic in a Marcelin list, with Miri, Mazda, Missandei, obviously to get the Devotees of the Dragon cycled and used earlier, and Zaro, a classic NCU lineup in my opinion. I personally think that this is a brave man. I'll send this list to you as well, so you've got it, Dave. Refer to it. There. I think this person is a very brave man. Let's put it like that. But Marcelin GCS, that's a combo I used to love. And now people bring it back up. But Belwas in Lysine Sellswords. Belwas with Battle Scars, giving them the vicious, the rerolls, and the highest. Now, obviously, the big thing here with the Lysine is that they've got crit blow. They're potentially going to be healing up, obviously. So you're going to really double down on that. They're already getting highest, but now you can get them the rerolls at whim. And if you know your target's pretty weak, you can just give them vicious. This is another kind of like, this unit's probably going to die. But hopefully it takes someone down in the meantime. If anything, the reason I like this list is actually because of the supporting cast. Having a unit of Screamers and a unit of Outriders to support the aggressive nature of the Sellswords, I think is really good. I think Screamers are obviously, I genuinely think they're one of the best units in the game for points effectiveness. Outriders are incredible. You've even got Zaro, just to say, you know what, you're not going to kill my Lysine Sellswords in one attack. I like this. I think it's unique. I think it's interesting. And the fact that it has Golden Company Swordsman in it as a throwback. Yep. I don't even know if this list is good, by the way. This has just got everything in it that I like to see in Targs. What are your thoughts?
Well, before I get to the Sellswords, I mean, the Golden Company Swordsmen are cool and all, but I just have to defer to the fact that Sword Masters, in my opinion, are just
better.
Immensely better. I mean, because even if you do defensive style for one attack now,
Yep.
you're going to the same morale that the swordsmen already were. You'll get so essentially just one defense over the swordsman. And as far as attacking, they both always get to reroll, but the Unsullied can't be weakened. And or I should say they can't have a weekend expended on them.
Mhm.
But I think the biggest thing is like it's Sundering Crit Blow for one attack, or and with a drop of 754.
Yeah, the drop off is
do you
huge.
want 876 with precision all the time? You don't have to use an order to do it. I think the Unsullied Swordmasters are the clear winner there, in my opinion. But that aside, the Lysine Sellswords with Belwas, I do like the combo.
Mhm.
The only thing I'm not a huge fan of is the double up on the highest attack die. If you're at last rank, you won't get all three, essentially.
Mhm.
Unless somehow you're at last rank and don't have 2 pillage, and then that's sad days anyways.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you could even get rerolls if you really wanted rerolls. One, you could charge, but two, you could run Khaleesi to give you those rerolls.
Yep.
And then Vicious, you don't, if I'm not mistaken, you don't really have any panic tokens or intimidating presence. Nothing to add to that Vicious.
Devastating Impact from Marsland's commander card, and he also has Warcry on a card, right? So there is token play, but
the downside. So I agree with the Warcry part. The downside with the Devastating Impact is now we're talking about a charge, in which case you now have the rerolls.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
not a huge fan overall of that combo, just because there's too many because I think Battle Scars is absolutely awesome for 1 point, but you really have to be able to maximize on all of the abilities at some point.
Yeah.
Not from the get-go of the game, but at some point you want to be able to say, okay, awesome, I have Vicious and your Panicked, or -1 from a tree, or Intimidating Presence. Awesome, I get rerolls and I didn't charge, and awesome, I get highest attack die when getting highest attack die for me is hard to do. So overall, I probably would have to rate this list probably a 5.
Okay. Well, with all that was the last one. And that puts Vlad's 9 activation Greatjar number, which probably isn't a surprise. Greatjar number, 9 activations. What isn't there to like? As the best list, but the other Stark list, ironically coming in at the high. It seems like we have rated the Stark lists higher in general. Maybe saying that Starks is the place for sellswords. Now we won't go into it because I know you need to go soon. But if you were to pick a faction that you would try to put sellswords into, what would it be?
Greyjoys.
Of course.
I know that's like a cop-out answer. So, not counting Greyjoys, what would I put them in? Let me just get all the factions so I can look at them. Oh, perfect. I know exactly one. Hands down, I would put them in Free Folk. If we were allowed to.
He's trolling me here, isn't he?
If we were allowed to. Coordination tactics, their abilities that'd be, game over.
Bonkers.
That is kind of a hard one. I would say if we're not counting, obviously, Free Folk, you can't. I'm not huge, and we're not counting Greyjoy because obviously they just amplify the whole pillage thing.
I think Greyjoys is a fine answer, but it's kind of the obvious one, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's why I kind of like feel weird picking that one. I'd say at face value, because we're not saying like over other units, because I almost feel like Lysine are in that weird spot that you're not really taking them over a bunch of other units. Not really wanting Night's Watch. I wouldn't really pick Lannisters personally, Boltons or neutrals. I also really wouldn't do Targs. I really think it comes down to a three-way tie of Stark, Baratheon, and possibly even Martell.
Okay. Stark, Baratheon. We've had a few Stark lists today. And a Baratheon list of all things, actually. So yeah, cool. I still think people should give them more of a try. Don't see enough. Definitely don't see enough sellswords on the field, in my opinion. So give them a try. Run some of the lists we've gone through today. See what you kind of fancy and see where they get to. So, Dave, before you disappear, before we go, before we finish the show, we've had Brienne 2-point neutral attachment. We've had sellswords. What is the next challenge we can set to viewers here today to build a list around it and try and maximize the kind of efficiency is not really the right term, but maximize the use of or build around a particular thing? You can choose whatever you want, and if you choose Tully Cavaliers or Knights of Castle Rock, I might have to come and murder you.
So, and we're not just talking, obviously, especially with what you just said, we're not talking just neutrals, because that's what it's been so far.
It happens to have been neutrals. Anything that you think is criminally underused that you'd love to see people build around and try and experiment with. Something that people might consider bad because it just doesn't seem play. It can be an attachment or unit or even an NCU. Of course, NCUs are a bit harder to do that with.
All right, I think I know the answer. Let me just look through a couple of these real quick.
I'll let you have a little think. I'm just going to read out some of the chats while you do that. Joe ran a bar of sellswords at our regional, but that didn't go well. Yeah, a bar of sellswords is a personal favourite of mine. Tristan also saying it. I do like a bar of sellswords. It's not particularly good because a bar is kind of sad. But yeah, Evil Sponge saying Hedge Knights, too easy. Too easy. I like Hedge Knights as well. Still some of the best models in the range. Hence, my love for them probably a bit over. I think they're great. Yeah.
All right, so
go
on. I always probably say this name wrong, and I'm sure it's incredibly underrated, and it probably has 0 plays according to stats.
Okay, go on.
The High Sensual.
Oh, come on. Yes, you are right. It has 0 plays on stats. Unfortunately, it's not listed as a playable piece.
It's funny because I actually bring it to all my major events. I'll bring it and I'll put it near my NCUs, and like I have to like explain, like, hey, I only have 2 NCUs. And they're like, what, you don't have 3? I was like, no, this is just the High Sensual. Just there for show. But no, my real answer, and this is just because I've done so well with them and people give them a hard rap, is Sunspear Dervishes.
Okay, I knew you might say something like that. For those of you who don't know, this is the man who built Sunspear Dervishes into 2 lists. No, sorry, into one of his lists, and he ran 2 copies of it to good success.
And same at not only at AdeptCon, but at the qualifier we just had.
Yep.
I've #1 unit in Martells, period, hands down.
There we go.
That is my opinion on them. They play exactly the way Martells want you to play, in my opinion. I think, like, in a vacuum, especially in certain other factions, they probably would be the way everyone's talking about them. But, and they're like the key reason why I play the way I play, and why I play so similar to probably like you do, Mickey, with your free folk. You know, with Dune Tactics, 2 weakened, potentially 3 weakened every single round, and I get to retreat after you attack me. Like,
Yeah.
so, and I run these guys with tons of different attachments. I run them by themselves. I do them with commanders. I mean, these guys, I do everything with them, and they just work so well.
Yeah. Love it. Absolutely love it. So there we go. Sunspear Dervishes. And by the way, anyone who just looks at Dave's results on stats and just copies the list will get minus marks. I want people to be imaginative, try some stuff out. I do agree with you. They are probably criminally underrated in terms of people's opinion of them. Pick rate of only 15%. Only played 408 games on stats in season 4.
Oh, how about this? I play like when they first, like Martellus first came out, and I started playing these guys. I was winning events with them, playing them as a 5-up save because I had no idea they were a 4-up. I was just like, oh, they're really fast, so they have to be a 5-up, right? Like that's just like the way my brain worked. And it wasn't until like someone pointed out, they're like, why are you rolling 5-up saves on your guys?
Fair. Unintentionally nerfing yourself and still winning.
Yep.
Love that. I already had some ideas I might put together. But yeah, well, no, thank you very much, Dave, for today. It's been great to catch up with you. And it's been chilled and nice chat with you about a bunch of different things. When's the next Small Council Radio episode then? This week?
A
Next
good
week?
chance. I'll have to speak with Spencer, but there's a good chance it could be this Friday. Someone needed to swap shifts. That's why I'm actually off today. So I had, I'm fortunate that I only work Monday and Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't worked in like 5 days. So lots of time to prepare and probably do an episode this Friday. Lots of time to catch up on, work and things around the house with all those,
Issues.
things happening. I saw someone in the comments said who cursed this man. I'm like, I don't know, but I must have walked under too many ladders or kicked too many black cats. I don't know.
Brilliant. All right. Well, I look forward to it. One of the few episodes I remember, especially back in the day when we used to do episodes all the time. Content, from both sides of the pond. And I can remember staying up until the early hours of the morning listening live till 2 or 3 in the morning. On Tuesday nights sometimes, most of the time, wasn't it?
Yep.
So,
We've had a lot of different days with, and that's the other kind of flexibility, if anyone's considering it, is we don't necessarily, some people have very specific days that they had to do it, and that's why we had so many people part of small council, because I wanted enough people to where we could, even if a bunch of us were busy, there'd be enough hosts that someone could do the show, because that was my goal, was to always have one episode a week and never stop. But like I said, a lot of people are either falling out of the game or just they have a lot of life stuff going on, myself included. I think Spencer's been the only one that's like, are we doing a show? Like, what's going on? So hopefully Friday I'll talk to Spencer about that, but I think for sure by next week.
Cool.
But we'll see.
And you'll be back for good then.
Yep. For good. Every single week.
It's like a Rick and Morty episode, isn't it? We're back again, Rick and Morty! It's gonna be Rick and Morty forever! Anyway, I appreciate it, Dave. I really do.
Of course.
Alright then. Very quickly. If you didn't know, guys, we haven't covered it today. It was the Canadian Grand Tournament this last weekend, the summer Canadian event. For the life of me, all of the words just exited my skull at that exact moment. The Great Canadian Open, the Summer Great Canadian Open, this last weekend, it was won by Sam Stoll, Evil Morty, who's a patron over on Stats. So, grats, Sam. beating N-Line in the final. N-Line Britch, lovely bloke as well, running double tally Cavaliers, I believe. But do check out that. We've got a load of stuff coming up as well. We've got the Armenian Nationals this weekend, an event in Moncaya, Spain, Barcelona, Daventry. The Chain Stags sold out in 2 days, I think, this event, run by Grant in Daventry. An event in Gdansk in Poland, an event in Wrocław, Poland, a TTS event in Russian by the looks of it, an event in Berlin, Germany. We don't see that many Berlin events, which is good to see. Another one. An event in Radom, Poland, and Ploy, Poland. Should the pronunciation of that. One spec in Germany, as well as La Loupe in France. We've also got Pensacola, Florida, where they're running an ELO event, Battle for the Red Keep. We've got an event in Marricksville, New South Wales in Australia. Cool. Good to see some more Australian people getting on there. It's another Shanghai Fight Club as well this weekend in Shanghai. We've got an event in Warsaw, an event in Magdeburg, Germany, and Overland Park, Kansas. That'll be the Kansas City. They're doing Starter Box +1 event. I was talking to Brandon a little bit about this, talking about what he would potentially pick up, and he was gonna potentially think about Martells or Boltons, but wasn't really sure. Helsinki as well, but that's next weekend, and some other stuff next weekend as well. Cover that. But plenty of events across the whole world. You've got your Wardens of the Midwest are running their Knights of Summer event next weekend, is that right?
Yep. So not this coming Saturday, but next weekend will be our monthly tournament.
Cool. Are you going to be going?
Yep. That list I sent you. That list I sent you is the list I'm. One of the 2 lists I'm running. The Night's Watch ones.
I will. I'll put it back up on screen if anyone wants cheat codes to see what he's actually running, and you can go. I know what Dave's running ahead of time. Yeah, interesting. Elite Night's Watch. But yeah, no, fantastic. Really hope that goes well for you. And obviously, not just you, but obviously the team down there. I know Edgehopper's putting a lot of effort into it, among other things. But yeah, no, it's really, really awesome to see. And it's really awesome to see people still tuning in to the show as well. As the Boogus King said earlier on in the episode, don't be afraid to give us a like. And the last thing I'm going to do before we end the episode is he did ask, can I get some pictures of his 100-point battle? And I'll throw those pictures up to take us out of the episode. So, yeah, you know, not the way I play the game. It's not me. This isn't like a thing I would do. But by all means, guys, if you want to run games of 100 points or more or less and just really just have fun with the game and really enjoy the game, that's exactly what we want from players to do. And what people enjoy and how people enjoy it can differ. You know, there's multiple things here that I'm like, oh my god, there's 3D terrain, there's, you know, big, huge battlefield tables with, I'm guessing, different kind of game modes or slightly edited game modes. But I'm not the arbiter of your fun. You go and enjoy the game in the way that you enjoy it. And do enjoy the game, guys. You know, that's what we want from everybody playing. Starks versus Free Folk, it looked like. There's a lot of fucking Tully Cavalier there. Holy shit. What happened? I got charged. But yeah, really hope that this game went well for you. It looks like you guys enjoyed it. And I really hope that everyone's events everywhere are enjoyable. I really hope you all keep enjoying the game. Any last words from yourself, Dave?
No. Just I guess stay tuned for more Small Council. I know our Discord has been a little quiet. I'll probably put a post there, but until then, if you want to head over there in case I forget, give us some suggestions on what you would like us to talk about, and we can you know, sift through those, and because we have a handful of ideas of what to talk about, but especially if it's like going to be our first show back in a while, I'd like to discuss whatever is on your guys' mind.
Cool. It looks like they had 100 point of Baratheon and 100 point of Targs as well. And it's the 400 point game, so yeah, amazing. Brilliant. Well, best of luck with the show, obviously, and I really hope you enjoy it.
Thank you.
And anyone watching, thank you very much. And I'll see you in a few weeks, most likely. Take it easy.
See ya.
Ready? Aim!
There's too many.
Anyone see my mammoth?
Stop me!